Hey, all my legacy leaders out there. How you all doing today? This is Robert Heath Sr. with the Legacy Leadership Podcast. This evening, we are definitely coming to you with a great special. We had a little bit of technical difficulties when we tried to do our um, our Wednesday show, but I wanted to just let you know that we got it today, and our guest, Lenore Kantor, will definitely just drop some gems during the conversation. So I wanted to welcome you again to the Legacy Leadership Podcast, where we help leaders to change the world one legacy at a time. So um, just wanted to thank you all for tuning in and rocking with us the entire time. I know that each of you all come and you tune into the show and you're getting great information. And I just really want to let you know that we thank you, right? I set up this podcast for you all as a place where we can all gather together, those of us that want to become better, that want to figure out how to be better leaders of ourselves and leaders of our communities. And so the Legacy Leadership Podcast is a place where we gather together to learn more about manifesting that greatness that lies within us and also the greatness that lies within others so that we can, help to change the world, like we always say, one legacy at a time. So thank you again for watching with us and tuning in. And before I get too far into the discussion, those of you all who are watching, because this is definitely a replay, go ahead in the comments and let us know where you're watching from, um, and, and 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 what it is that you do, as far as, are you a teacher, a business owner, a leader in a company, a mid-level manager. How are you a leader and what do you do? All right. And so I want to go ahead and drop you really quickly our quote for the week. Quote for the week this week is from the phenomenal management guru, Mr. Peter Drucker. And what his quote says is that the only valid purpose of a business is to create customers. I'll say that again. The only valid purpose of a business is to create customers. Now, we're going to come back to that quote as we have our legacy leadership discussion today. But I want you all to just think about that, let it sink in, and think about, give me some of your thoughts on that in the chat box. Let me know if you agree, you disagree, you think there are other reasons. Go ahead, put that down in the box. And while we go over that, let's go over a little bit of the rules with regard to the podcast, right? So rule number one, as you all know, we always talk about getting connected, right? If you like what you're hearing on the show, one of the things we want you to do is connect with us. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn at Legacy Leadership Consulting, right? And then we also have the hashtag Legacy Leaders Community here on Facebook that you can join, where we drop a lot of other information on there. So go ahead and connect with us, and make sure that you get on Facebook and click to see our posts first so that you can make sure that you never miss an episode. All right. Second rule is spread the wealth. Make sure that you're going and that you're sharing the show. If you're watching right now, go ahead and share out to all your friends so that they can get to hear what's going on and and get in on the discussion, right? We want you to share it, and not just share it as far as sharing it with your friends, but also share with your comments. Let us know what you're thinking. Let me know if what I'm saying is something that you agree with in the comments, or if there's something, or if you got some questions, right? And as you all know, when we talk about getting the free books, we're going to put an offer in today as well at the end. When we talk about that, to get a free book, one of the things that you have to do is you have to share the podcast. That's one of the first things you have to do in order to talk about getting on that list. All right. So rule number three is the rule that's the most important to me. This is a space where we gather together to learn how to get ourselves better and how to make our community better, how to make those that we serve better. And one of the things that's most important about that is that we have to treat each other with respect, right? It's respectful commentary only. We can agree, we can disagree. You can disagree with something I say. You can disagree with something that one of my guests says. You can disagree with something that people say in the comments. But what I do need you to do is make sure that that our disagreement is agreeable, right? Is respectful. That we respect other people's opinions, and that we respect other people's right to be wrong, in our opinion, right? It doesn't mean that you have to tell people, that you have to judge them, or that you have to treat them with disrespect in order to tell them that you don't necessarily agree with their opinion and to make their opinion known. So we want to make sure that we keep that done. So we always want to make sure we're treating everybody with respect, and that's enough on that, right? So before we get to our interview, I want to go ahead and get over into our leadership discussion. So again, you're watching the Legacy Leadership Podcast, where we're changing the world one legacy at a time. All right, so we're going to get into our legacy leadership discussion, like I was telling you about today. And our quote again is from the phenomenal Peter Drucker. He wrote just an immense amount of books. One of my favorites, Managing Oneself, but he's written a number of different books on leadership, on management, and on business. And one of the quotes that he said that really sparked the discussion for today is, the only valid purpose of a business is to create customers. And, there's a lot of different things we can say about that quote. Number one, the fact that yes, businesses do things, but the whole idea is that if you don't do something that is valuable to the market, therefore that people want and that people are willing to buy from you, are you really doing something for the market, right? I was talking to a number of a couple of my clients today and helping them understand that there's a difference between having an intention to help and actually helping, right? And oftentimes we mistake our intention with the results of what we do. And this is, and so in looking at that quote, I really talked about, I did a little twist on it. And what I feel is the only valid purpose of leadership is to create other leaders, right? So the only valid purpose of leadership is to create other leaders. And to that point, right, a lot of times we think that leadership is about getting things done. And the purpose of this podcast and the things that we talk about and the purpose of legacy leadership consulting in general is to change the paradigm of leadership being about getting things done effectively, right? Yes, that is a result. Yes, that is something that happens, but that is something that happens because people are led to be effective, to be efficient, and to utilize their skills in the best ways possible, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about the path of leadership and the purpose of leadership. And basically, my belief is the purpose of leadership is actually to create other leaders, right? And the path of leadership goes like this. There's basically 4 steps. When we start off, and this is analogous to Stephen Covey's discussion of kind of our dependence, independence, and interdependence journey in the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? When we start off, we're led by others. When we're in that space of dependence, we're led by others. Others tell us what to do, how to do it, how to get there, right? When we're children, our parents tell us what to do. When we're in school, our teachers. And even when we get to the professional world, our bosses tell us what to do, right? But the next step is where we learn to lead ourselves, where we learn to have our own work ethic, where we learn to see what results we want, where we learn to become very effective at doing what we do and getting what we want, right? And a lot of times that's where people stop. And that's okay if what you learn how to do is to lead yourself, you're a contributing member of society. But for leaders, it's a little bit different, right? And so the first step when you become a leader, right, is that you're leading others and you're teaching others how to become leaders of themselves, how to lead themselves, right? So it's not just that you're leading others, right? And I feel like there's the leaders, and John Maxwell said this, and I thought it was so apropos. There are leaders that try to develop followers, right? But even the leaders that try to develop followers, they have to eventually develop leaders who are able to lead themselves. Because if they don't, then the work that they have to do overcomes them and overwhelms them, and then their performance actually deteriorates. So the first piece is to try to teach people how to become leaders of themselves. And what we talk about in legacy leadership paradigm is we go from executive leaders, where you're leading yourself and you're leading others, but you're just really dictating to others, and by sheer force of your will, you're getting others to do things. And then you go to becoming an empowering leader, the type of leader that facilitates the transformation in others, the manifestation of their greatness and their ability to lead themselves. And then there's that final level, that legacy leadership level, where you become the type of leader that you lead others to become leaders of others, right? And so you lead others to learn how to lead others. You set up systems that create this kind of paradigm where people learn to lead themselves and then they learn to lead others. So that is, where what that quote from Peter Drucker says to me. It basically gives me the idea, like you said, leadership, the only valid reason or purpose for leadership is to create other leaders of themselves and leaders of others. So that's our legacy leadership discussion for today. I want to thank you again for tuning in to Legacy Leadership Podcast. where we're changing the world one legacy at a time. Stay tuned because the next segment is going to be our phenomenal interview with Lenore Kantor, a phenomenal businesswoman who is awesome in the leadership space. She's helped a number of different companies, and you'll hear a lot about her bio when I bring her on in the next segment. Just wanted to let you know one, kind of station identification, if you would. This podcast is presented again by the Legacy Leadership Consulting Group and also by Legacy Empowerment Academy, where our vision is a world where everyone understands the amazing gifts that lie within them and where all leaders work to facilitate the manifestation of these gifts in those they lead, right? The goal of this podcast, the mission of Legacy Leadership Consulting is to help leaders to cultivate environments that facilitate the manifestation of their team's greatness and create systems that sustain the transformation. We develop leaders who develop other leaders. So for more information about how we can help transform your business or your organization or your team, please go to www.legacyleadershipmastery.com. Again, that's www.legacyleadershipmastery.com. And to learn more about how to make the journey to becoming a legacy leader with us in the Empower method that we teach, be sure to get a copy of my best-selling book, Why Can't People Just Do Their Jobs? The Empowering Leader's Guide to Getting More Fulfillment, Having Less Stress, and Getting the Best Out of Your Team, no matter who you lead. That's available on Amazon Kindle for $7.99, and then it's also available in paperback on Amazon as well for $10. And you'll be able to find the link in the description below. So I want to thank you all again for tuning in to the Legacy Leadership Podcast, where we're changing the world one legacy at a time. Our next segment, we're going to turn our attention to our guest for today, Lenore Kantor, and I think you all are gonna really enjoy it. You're in for a treat. So now to move to our segment with Lenore. Now, all right, and now let's go ahead and turn our attention to our guest for today. We have a phenomenal lady that has come through and has been gracious enough to bless the mic and be on the show with us, and that is our guest, Lenore Kantor. And just to give you a little bit of information about her, Lenore is fiercely compassionate about helping clients to accelerate their growth and thrive amidst change. She works with CEOs, founders, business owners, and executive teams to create innovative and market-leading companies. As a master strategist, branding expert, and business advisor, Lenore knows what it takes to build successful, high-growth businesses, develop brand leadership, increase sales, attract and retain talent, and satisfy investors. As an executive coach trained in profound inner work modalities, she supports individuals and organizations to embrace change, develop leadership capacities, and maximize their growth. She has over 20 years of executive marketing and global product management experience. She has successfully launched, get this, over 100 products and won 38 industry awards. And she's managed marketing communications for 2 publicly traded companies, an IPO, and 10 M&A transactions across executive marketing and product management roles at Thomson Reuters, Morgan Stanley, BNY Mellon, FXall, and International Securities Exchange. And she has degrees from Columbia Business School, University of Pennsylvania, design thinking training from ESADE Business School, and the Art Center College of Design. She also has coaching certifications from the Empowerment Institute and the Radical Aliveness Institute. And that's just some of the stuff that she's done. As you can see, as we always try to do on the podcast, I bring you people who are definitely going to benefit your lives and are qualified to talk to you, right? And here's the other key. Lenore has multiple resources, including the Growth Through Leadership Framework ebook that is available on her website. Everybody, I want you to welcome our guest, Lenore Kantor. Thank you, Lenore, for being on the show. And wow, everything that you've done is a mouthful, and I'm just so excited to have you on the show.
Thanks, Robert. It's great to be here. I also enjoyed looking at your background, which is pretty amazing. So
well, thank you.
I'm looking forward to chatting.
Coming from you, I take that as a tremendous compliment. Thank you so much. So tell the people a little bit about your background, where you're from, and kind of what you do now.
Yeah, well, I spent 20 years in the corporate world. In my early career, I was a product manager. So that's where I was sort of designing and building technology products and different services in the financial industry. And
Mm,
then I transitioned into marketing. So I was helping to create and build brands and launch new products. So I've sort of been involved in that product life cycle end to end. And a lot of the companies that I was at have been very high growth businesses. And
mm,
so by their very nature, there's always a lot of change. So that's kind of the water that I swim in, which is there's always change happening and we
mm,
need to adapt to that. And I had helped take FXall, which was a very interesting financial technology company, public.
mm.
And 6 months later, they were acquired by Thomson Reuters. And I was there for
Wow.
about a year. And I, had one of those moments where I was like, what am I doing? I got to do this for myself. It's just time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I decided to, start my own business. So at that point, I launched my company, which I called Launch Warrior because I, was sort of used to launching. And
Hmm.
just recently, like, last month, I rebranded my business as Growth Warrior
Awesome.
to more accurately reflect what I was doing, because I think people thought, oh, she works mainly with startups, because I was doing a lot of mentoring of founders, and I was speaking to different tech accelerator programs. And I said, I love startups. They're amazing,
Hmm.
but most of my
Hmm.
clients are actually, established businesses. And then I've done a lot of work with coaching leaders. So growth consulting and leadership coaching is sort of the focus of what I'm doing right now. And
Awesome.
yeah, so that's
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. And so talk to us a little bit, the crux of what I bring leaders on the show generally to talk to the audience, and because what we get to see, and when we read our bios and when we see our things, it seems as if
yeah,
we've always been on this path of greatness, right?
yeah.
And I love for leaders who come on the show to talk about their legacy transformation story. That time in your life when you got where the light bulb came on, where you saw that you could be more, where you saw that you could do more, and kind of talk to us about what was the first time where you got that sense that you could do more, that you could be more, that you could have more, and who were the leaders that kind of helped you to see that in yourself?
It's sort of funny. I actually was thinking about this topic. I mean, I just think I've always been like a hard worker, like I
Mm-hmm.
just like to do things right. And so I
Mm-hmm.
always was sort of had like a sense of, oh, well, let's kind of make things better. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I've had different people that I absolutely admire, but I think there's some way where like I just had this, I'm sort of going to joke, but the bossy gene, like, right? So, I mean, I'm not,
Right.
but like I just like to make things better. Like I think people all have natural gifts,
Mm-hmm.
and like I'm one of those people who sees like 10 miles ahead, so I'm always like planning and thinking, and so that was just something that I did, and that's how
Mm-hmm.
it, and when you're creating new things, that by
Mm-hmm.
its very nature is sort of a
Right.
leadership,
Right. Hmm. Yeah,
mindset.
you've got the vision,
Um,
and you're bringing visions into reality. So,
yeah.
so was this even kind of when you were a kid? Like, was it maybe like for a lot of leaders, like for myself, I know that my first leader, the people that made me believe that I could be more were my parents, right? My father was the type of person that was like, you can be anything you want to be, and here's how
Yeah.
you can do it. And he would always tell me how great I was, but he also modeled leadership and discipline and all of those kind of traits for me. For some leaders, I know that it goes all the way back to the home. Some other people have a teacher or someone in school that taught them and told them they could be something. Where do you think that started out with? Do you feel like you had supportive parents, or how did it work?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I do think that there was a leadership in my family, but in an unusual way. Both of my parents were independent professionals. My dad was a dentist, but he
Mm-hmm.
was president of his dental association. My
Mm-hmm.
mom was a lawyer, and she was president of the Women's Bar Association. But
Got
I think the first inspiration for me actually came from my grandmother.
Mm.
My mother's mother was a leader in a large nonprofit organization
Nice.
from the early days. So I remember when I was really young going to the office with my grandmother. So
Mm.
I think I always had a role model for, you know, even though, you know, at the time, I think in her mind, you know, she could have been a doctor, but she ended up becoming a music teacher. But
Mm-hmm.
then she got involved with this nonprofit organization, and yeah, so you know, I just always saw women in executive roles, you know, in the office
Mm.
place from a young age, which, you know, when I was growing up, I actually think was quite unusual.
Right. That's one of the things I was going to say. It wasn't very usual, you know. And what do you think that did for your view of what you could do? Seeing people that you knew, people that you were connected to being successful, being powerful, being in roles of authority and leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I just always thought like, oh yeah, like I- I'm smart. I'm gonna like work hard. I'm just gonna, you know, make suggestions. I don't know. I guess I just never really thought I never had any thought of doing otherwise, because that
That's
was just
awesome.
how I operated.
Right. And
So
it's so interesting that you point to that because I talk to my leaders a lot about the cultures that we create, right? And
yeah.
there's a lot of times where we're fighting against the culture that's out there, right? I talk about kind of the executive leadership, the executive leadership pathway or pipeline, which is really a, you know, defect, zero defect mentality. Mistakes
Mm,
are bad. You got to be careful about what you do, right? And what that creates is a lot of people who, if they aren't, you know, just always that top 10% of cream rising to the top people, then they're constantly walking around feeling like they're gonna make a mistake that's gonna get them fired. And so I talk to a lot of my leaders about creating a culture where your people know that you believe in them, that you expect them to do well, and that you're there to support them to do well. And I love your story because you're that kind of example of what it looks like and what it feels like when the expectation is there, the example is there, and the support is there. You never knew anything other than being successful because that was what was around you and that was what was expected of you, right?
yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is when I was reflecting on your question, it's not like I necessarily thought in high school that I was going to be, you know, anything in particular. I mean, I was fortunate to, you know, like I was in some of the honors classes. I went to great school. But, you know, as you go to places that are more competitive, like there are people that are a lot smarter and you got to work harder. And so I guess, you know, there was just some energy that I had around, like I like to create new things, and I was
Mm-hmm.
able to see the you know, opportunities to try
Right.
and like chart a new path. And
Mm-hmm.
the other thing I would say from what I was listening to your comment is like, I really think that there's something around encouraging people to make mistakes,
Yeah.
which is related to being innovative. And I
Yes.
think there's a way that I like taking risks and pushing myself, even
Mm-hmm.
if it meant I was gonna fall on my face. Like I
Yeah.
sort of did that more
Mm-hmm.
than maybe I even appreciated.
Yes. No, I love that. Oh, that's such a great point. One of the things that I talk about with my leaders and I talk about in the book, right? Leadership at its heart is cultivating resilience, right?
Love that.
You create an environment where your people feel comfortable trying and failing and realizing that if they fail, that's not an indication of who they are. That's a step along the way to success. And it's so amazing. I mean, just looking at your life story and looking at the kind of the lessons that you learned kind of intuitively growing up and seeing what you saw, right? Like where you came from and what you saw kind of spurred in you this this drive and this passion and this understanding. Like what I see most from what you've been saying, which I think is just amazing in the fact that it's kind of played itself out this way, is you dealt with the same problems that other people dealt with. You dealt with the same competition that other people dealt with, but there was a mindset that you had and that you've had since you can remember, that was, there was no expectation that you couldn't do it. There was no expectation that if you didn't work hard at it, and I talk to my clients so much about the difference between a champion and someone who's not a champion, is that when the champion is on the canvas, the champion knows that their place is up. Their place is standing up. They know to get up. They don't feel like, oh, I got knocked down, so I guess this is where I belong. The champion's like, no, I got to get back up, right? It's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get back up. And just look at all the things that you've accomplished, right? And it started with that seed of, that's what we do. That's who you are. Don't doubt yourself. Go work hard and make it happen. And I'm in awe of it, just being able to see it, because I get geeked up about this stuff. I love leadership. I love to see the transformation stories of people who have good leaders, because this is a story that you see over and over and over again. It's not that you haven't messed up. As a matter of fact, you go and you step outside of your boundaries. You innovate. You bring products to the market. You're creating a business now. And the whole thing is, you're not afraid of failure. And that is so amazing.
Yeah, thanks. I just love your analogy about a champion knows to stand up, because I saw you had a whole photograph of a karate group, and I don't know if it was karate, but
Jiu-jitsu, yeah.
Jiu-jitsu. So I used to study karate, and I'm trying to figure out, I would like to get back into martial arts. And there is something about being a fighter, and the name of my company is Warrior. And I was in the financial services world. It was a pretty demanding environment, and there was just something about that warrior spirit. To me, it's a certain energy, and that's just, I guess I sort of always had that. And now I try and be a gentler warrior.
There you go. Right?
And there's still something about, you kind of
mixing it up, right?
Yeah.
And here's a shameless plug for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I'm a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu instructor as well. That's the picture that you saw was the group that I got certified with. And for a gentle warrior, one of the cool things, I would encourage you to start studying Jiu-Jitsu if you have that in your area, especially a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu school, because it allows you. I always tell people, if you get in a fight with me, I'm probably the best person for you to get in a fight with, because I'm going to be doing the most that I can to not really hurt you, but still manage the fight and manage the distance and do things. And, I just give people hugs and put them to sleep. But talk to us a little bit, because I'm really interested in your growth warrior and your transition and your transformation with your company. Talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you're working on right now that really excite you.
Well, so I think part of why I repositioned my business was I really looked at what I've done throughout my career, and I realized, I really like to help people grow, and I like to help businesses grow. And to me, there's something about it's a corollary to what you were talking about, which I believe is that the skills that got us to where we are now are not always the skills we need to get us where we want to go.
Exactly.
And it's true of people, and I've had it in my own career where I had those junctures where I had to realize, oh man, I didn't, I need a new tools to get to the next level. And I see it happens with companies. So for example, when a company is in the early stage in a startup, they can operate a certain way and people do a lot of different things. And then as you start to grow, you can't have just a few people doing everything. You need to specialize. So you need to bring in different types of skill sets. And then as you get, let's say, to the 25 to 50, you double in size at that level. Well, then not everybody can fit in a conference room. You have to communicate differently. And then as you're going from, 50 to 100 employees to 1,000, they're at every stage of growth, there are different ways that an organization needs to sort of adjust itself to kind of deal with, those changes in order to support what it's
Yeah.
trying to accomplish. So,
No, I
um,
agree completely with you on that. And kind of to that, who are the organizations that you look to kind of help? And I know you were going from launch warrior to growth warrior. Talk to us a little bit about the specific kind of the niche that you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think the clients that I love to work with would be a company that's in that sweet spot. I call it like, emerging growth. So they're
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from 10 to 1,000 employees, and they're usually somewhere in the 1 to 100 million, 1 million to 100 million in
Mm-hmm.
revenue. Sorry, I get my
Mm-hmm.
numbers out.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I got you.
That's where they're sort of, they're usually on a high growth trajectory when they reach a certain point and they're trying to grow. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of my companies are more B2B. That's the background that I have. So
Mm-hmm.
it is about putting in place the right business processes and aligning the team. And a lot of the work that I do is helping companies get really clear on what is it that they're trying to achieve? How do they
Mm-hmm.
talk about it? What
Mm-hmm.
kind of marketing and brand do they need to have? And then how can they align that with their culture, their strategy, and their processes so everything works together? And I have a little model that I use for both companies and individuals. We have to align the inner with the
Mm-hmm.
outer and address the interpersonal. And when you have
Yes.
those three things working together, then your company is in alignment and it can grow more effectively.
Yes, yes. No, I love that. Yeah, and that's kind of analogous to that. I talk to my clients a lot about congruent communication, right? Like a lot of times the problems that they run into, they deal with the incongruencies between we're saying this, but our methods do
Oh,
this.
I love that. I read your book and I saw that little model. I thought that was perfect. Like when there's like when what they're thinking or how they're acting is
Mm-hmm.
totally out of sync with what they're saying, that whole there's some research around that basically shows that people look mostly at like how they feel about
Mm-hmm.
what you're demonstrating in your body. And that's like 55%,
Yeah.
and then tone of voice is like 38%, and
Mm-hmm.
what
Exactly.
you
And what you
actually
say
say is
is actually only
7%.
7%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy, right? That was the one class that I took. I remember that was a class in undergrad that blew my mind. That was one of my degrees. I got a speech communications degree. And that class was interpersonal communication. And it changed the dynamic of how I spoke, how I talked, how I argued, how I debated, because I had never understood that communication could go awry in so many different places. So it's really good. I love the fact that you kind of are setting your clients up to make sure that, like I said, they have that congruent communication. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
What are some of the myths that you generally see? Your clients kind of some of the myths that they believe about what they're doing or what it takes to be on that growth path. What are some of the things that you help clients kind of overcome the paradigms that they deal with?
Yeah, I'll give you one example on the leadership side for an individual person, and then one on the company side and how they sort
Mm-hmm.
of relate. I was recently talking with a woman who was a manager. She'd been at a company for many years, and she
Mm-hmm.
wasn't promoted. In fact, I think her position ended up being eliminated, even though
Mm-hmm.
she'd been an incredibly successful manager. And one of the reasons, or the feedback that she got, was that she was too nice. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, that's really interesting. Like, when is being nice a bad thing? But I think there was this feeling that she wasn't aggressive enough, and the company had this expectation or this like blueprint for, well, successful leaders here are going to be really aggressive, and like it's a certain mindset that that's the definition of a successful leader. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel that organizations that don't recognize all the strengths of their different, leaders are really
Mm-hmm.
missing this opportunity. And to have a culture that only rewards one particular way of behaving and acting is actually, in my mind, fairly short-sighted, because
Exactly.
you need to, and I think you wrote about this quite a bit, which
Mm-hmm.
is that different people are motivated in different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
not everybody is motivated by money, and not
Yeah.
everybody, needs to be told what to do. Like, people work in really different ways. And I think for me, it's really about recognizing, creating the values that are clear, and then having alignment between, if you're an individual, what your values are, and the organization you work for.
Yes.
Organizations to know what their values are, so they can attract the right talent, and then the organization can function in a way that represents what they're trying to achieve, and that things really are all synchronized so that they're working effectively.
Yes, no, that is perfect. That is awesome, awesome, awesome. And just really quickly, ladies and gentlemen, letting you know again, for those of you all that are just tuning in, this is Lenore Kantor that we are speaking with, a phenomenal leadership and business coach and entrepreneur. And we're talking about kind of how you need to have alignment in your, and I believe I'm taking your words right now, Lenore, alignment in the inner, the outer, and the interpersonal. I believe that's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is, what are some of the results that you've helped some of your clients to get? I know that you talked about in your over 20 years of experience in the corporate world, you've taken companies public, you've done M&As, and for the those of you all who aren't in the world out there, in the corporate world out there, there's mergers and acquisitions. And basically, what are some of the results that you've helped your clients to get? What are the things that you see as a result of your work?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I love doing with companies is really helping them to reposition themselves. So that can be because, again, they're trying to grow really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
or, for example, they're very successful in a particular niche or market, and then they want to enter a new market. So
Yeah.
when you're going into a new market, you sometimes need to rebrand, change your messaging, talk to that audience in a way that represents what they're most interested in. So I think a lot of my work is helping often brilliant technical founders and like leaders, right? They're really
Mm-hmm.
smart and great at what they do, and they've got amazing products, helping them translate that into what their customers really want to hear and will appreciate, and doing it in a way that helps them understand the value of their brand and marketing, and having the right message. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you've seen this, where there are people that are able to like describe things in like a lot of detail, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't really know what they're talking about. And if they
Yeah.
just sort of like take it up here and be like, oh, well, I help make such and such process easier. And then you'd be like, oh, well, I get that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do that for companies.
Nice.
And then with individuals, I help a lot of leaders at various stages of their professional growth. So early in their career, when young professionals are trying to get to the next level, how should they be positioning themselves? Mid-career, I help
Mm-hmm.
folks who have recently been promoted to manager level. How do they function as a manager? What are
Mm-hmm.
the relationships they need to build? How do they need to lead their team, manage conflict, things like that? And then I work with a lot of very senior people who maybe either trying to transition because they're not in a place that's a fit for them anymore, or they have a vision that they want to create something new, helping them make that leap and sort of change their mindset. And then I do also work with founders, either individual founders or leadership teams. Like I work
Mm-hmm.
with some co-founders, helping them figure out how are they going to work better together on their decision making. So I don't have like a particular like I think everyone's needs are sort of unique, and I try
Mm-hmm.
and meet them where they're at. But mostly what I try and do is help people figure out what's the best way for them to lead, so that they can be effective in whatever they're trying to achieve.
Nice, nice. I like that. And kind of one of the things that stuck out with me from what you said kind of the end result when they get, once you get them in alignment and you get their vision and their methods in alignment. Talk to the people a little bit about kind of what that does for the people that they lead. How does that help
Yeah.
your organization when the leaders understand and have alignment in what they're doing?
Well, I think that it makes people have this freedom that they can
Mhm.
then execute,
Yeah.
right? So you say, here's what we're trying to achieve, and you sort of empower them to do it. And by putting in place those processes and having a culture that really does let them do what you say you want them to do,
Hmm.
people like rise to the challenge. And I think it lets the organization be more effective. And
Hmm.
so sometimes that means making sure you've got the right people in the right places, and
Hmm.
also, sort of helping them create the vision for what they want, what you want to achieve. So recently I worked with a tech company that was just entering this new market. And so it was like a constant process of helping them to say, oh, we really want to become leaders in this space. Well, then to
Hmm.
be a leader, you got to talk like a leader, act like a leader, and that means
Yeah.
communicating regularly, getting feedback from your customers, doing more on the sales side and events and
Hmm.
more PR and, lots of things like that, but also communicating internally and, revamping the way. So there was a lot of different things that,
Right.
would come into play in that situation.
That's awesome. So kind of as we wrap up this segment, if there was one leadership thing that you could tell people, if there's one kind of takeaway for people to have from the interview, what would you give your most kind of important leadership
Oh, I have to think about that.
note?
Well,
No
I
problem.
think that what can be really helpful is to know what you value. So, what is most important to you in who you're working with, how you work with people, and then what are you really good at? So, know your strengths. And
Mm-hmm.
then ideally, you're going to find a place that values the same things that you do and that believes that the strengths that you have are important. And I think the more clarity that as an individual you have about what you're good at and what you care about, and for organizations, the same thing, you're going to attract the people that value you. So it
Mm-hmm.
becomes like a reinforcing situation that can be more positive. Because what I think can often happen is people don't know what they're good at, or they don't appreciate like that they have a unique style, and so they're
Mm-hmm.
not always happy where they are, or they're
Right.
at a place where they're not valued. And so that's never a good situation. And then I think that companies that aren't really clear on what makes them different, when they don't really understand what their secret sauce is,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of hard to attract clients and attract talent to want to work for you. So to me, they're sort of closely related.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Knowing yourself, knowing who you are, and it goes hand in hand. Kind of, I talk to my clients as leaders. Know who you are, know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, and then on the flip side, as leaders, know your team. Right?
Yeah,
You talk about taking inventory and knowing what
exactly.
your strengths and your weaknesses are. So that I like that y'all pay attention. You're going to hear more and more and more about that as we continue. See, it's not just me saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect.
There we go. So just a quick fun question here for you. If you had $1 million and you could give no more than 10% of it away to charity, what would you do with it? And you had to spend it in a month.
Well, I have two personal things that I care about. One is travel, so
Okay.
I would probably travel a bit.
Hmm.
The other is I might actually want to get a place that's right by the water, since I'm,
Nice.
definitely like being by the ocean or the beach or
Oh,
something
okay.
like that. So it would probably be one of those two
Good
things
to
for
go.
me.
Good to go. Yes, I too am a ocean beach view lover. Although I like the mountains too, so it's weird. I always tell my wife we're gonna have to have a spot in the mountains and then a spot at the beach, and we'll just do.
That's the best. That sounds like a great combination.
Right.
Skiing in the winter and
Yep, and then hanging out at the beach all the other times. No. So really quickly as we wrap up, talk to the people again. Just a real quick idea. Your ideal client, that person. What's the problem that they're dealing with, and why do they want to come and make sure they reach out to you as quickly as possible?
Sure. Well, my ideal corporate client would be a high growth company that was looking to scale and wanted some support about really making sure that they were focused on the right things to help them achieve that.
Hmm.
And in terms of any professionals that were in transition, I think that really the best clients for me are leaders who are trying to make the changes that they need to grow their business as well and grow
Hmm.
themselves professionally. And they want some support around how they can do that in a way that feels authentic for them.
Awesome, awesome. And tell us once more how those people, those leaders that are trying to grow themselves in those corporate businesses, how can they reach out to you? How can they get in touch with you?
I am at growthwarrior.co. So yeah, that's my new website.
And
And
that's
you can
CO,
also,
not the COM. So don't.
that's right, not COM, just CO. And yeah, I would love to connect with folks. I do have a bunch of different resources on my website around hiring the right people, how to communicate around organizational changes, that growth through leadership model. And I'm also, for folks who may be in the New York area, I do lead a series of leadership events on a monthly basis. So I'm always happy to have people there attending as my guests. So I love that you're having a leadership conversation, and that's what I do too. So it's like awesome to get other perspectives on that.
Great, great. And then one other thing, where can they connect with you on social media? Do you have any platforms
Yes,
that,
I am
that
on Facebook, L Cantor, Lenore, Lenore Cantor, L Cantor, and then also growth_warrior. And I'm on Twitter, same thing, I think growth_warrior and L Cantor, and also on LinkedIn. So those are my primary.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Lenore, I want to thank you again for being on the Legacy Leadership Podcast. Again, everybody, as you see, we bring phenomenal legacy leaders on, and we're changing the world one legacy at a time. And so I just want to really say thank you so much for, just sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to talk with you, and I'm so glad we were able to connect.
Awesome.